If you want to know what are hard decisions that you will face as a sports PT, you need to tune into this episode. Uh, Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome, all new listeners, and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. If you want to know what are hard decisions that you will face as a sports PT, you need to tune into this episode. Before I go on to the podcast, what is new in life? I do have to share. I just came back from a weekend camping trip, glamping trip with my family, and it was amazing. Good time away. If you've listened to this podcast, you know how I feel about just short weekends, resetting, getting you kind of brain cells to kick on and having good conversations with my kids and my wife. And so it was actually really, really fun. We went to it's a cabin, but it's kind of like glamping. It has electricity inside of it, but it was actually really, really cold, and it was just good to spend time with my kids. There wasn't, actually didn't even know if there was Wi-Fi or not, so it was just a good time to spend that with the family. And I'm a huge advocate of getting away from the cell phone and technology. So, and as difficult as that can be, it was good for the family to just be together, because someone presented this recently, and I think it hit me kind of hard. You know, after a certain point, after a certain age, your kids, my kids, all kids, there's a certain level of years that they will rely on you before their personality becomes independent, and you know, that they're self-fueling and they're like growth focused and everything else. And that timeline is right around like 11, 12, 13. And so, you know, it's being able to spend time with my family is very important. As my oldest, Zach, is 6, and Alex is 4, and Jacob's a year and a half, that trying to take advantage of that time. So wherever you are with your family, and that doesn't just apply to kids, but it's also like your parents and everybody else. So that was really rewarding for me. And there's a lot of reflection that my wife and I had, and what we're talking about. And that's the reason why today's episode is on hard decisions you'll have to face as a sports PT. Her and I were talking about hard decisions we've made as parents, like what is it, both as business owners, as parents, and all these other things. And so we thought about this. We're like, well, what about as clinicians? Like, what is it that you would give to somebody and say, gosh, stay away from this, or be aware of this, or it's normal and this is part of the process? There's a lot of context to that. So that's why today's episode, it was literally over a fire. We were camping with some delicious drinks, and we were reflecting on the challenges that every sports PT will have to go through or should avoid. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's go on to that. All right. So I am a big proponent. If you follow me on Instagram, I just shared this, and I'm a big proponent of, gosh, I not hate is a really strong word. I really dislike when people say like, how many years have you been practicing? Because then they try and use that as a reflection of how good you are as a clinician. And I think that that's crap. I think that that is a poor estimation of somebody's skill set. The same could be said if somebody was. I've been watching NFL football, and how long have you been in the NFL? And they might say like, oh, 10, 12 years. That means you've been able to survive that long, and you had some talent people go through. But somebody who is brand new and in there for only 3 to 5 years can actually be like superseding them, or like their skill set might even be better. So it's not years in the NFL, it's not years as a clinician. There's so much more to that. And so the constant reflection has been part of this process. And so when I look at what hard decisions you will face as a sports PT. I have to. Some of these are part of the process. Some of them you should avoid, and some of them are go towards them because they'll make you better. So as we talk about wherever you are in terms of how many years you've been practicing, don't apply that to what I'm talking about today. Don't apply, well, I've done that, I've seen that, who cares? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about hit a restart and just listen. And if you're stubborn, most of the time you turn off podcasts or you turn off videos when you don't hear what you want to hear. And for those who are like, wow, that's a little different, like I never thought about that. That's why I'm here to share information, because ultimately, as I give you guys more and more knowledge and share my experiences, you kind of have to filter, like, how does that apply to your current status, and how does that apply to your current methodology? It has to kind of fit. And when you look at your career as a sports PT, you're going to hit some bumps. That's just the nature of it. But not years of bumps will make you a great clinician. There's a lot to be said about things that will naturally, organically happen to you. So here's number one. This is my favorite. Return to play decisions. So if you've been listening to my podcast, I love, absolutely love return to play decisions, especially when there's a lot riding on the line. I crave it. I enjoy being aware that something's riding on the line, but that's just my personality. I've always been like that. I enjoy pressure. I enjoy really hard scenarios, and it puts you back against the wall. But it makes you a better clinician, because if you make the wrong answer or the right, it forces you to rethink, and that to me is powerful. So I put myself in those hard positions. I like literally put myself there because I enjoy it. If you ask my wife, she thinks I'm crazy because of that. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably somewhat like me in that you enjoy a little bit of that crazy mindset. And I think that return to play decisions are tough. Return to play decisions require so much forecasting. It requires so much back end work. And I think that you're going to be faced in your career, your entire career. You might get really good at it, and you've been doing this for 10 years and you've hit, every scenario possible. Working in the professional realm with athletes, you get these, they're like every day. They are every day. And so getting to a point, I did a residency for a year and a half at The Ohio State University. And my first job out of residency, I stayed on Ohio State for another year and a half. And then I got a job with the United States Olympic Committee. And I didn't realize the magnitude of decision making that would be required working with professional athletes. And I know you might think like, well, that's just common sense. No, but the minute to minute, hour by hour decision making. And it's a lot of stress. It's very, very difficult to make. And I had to make really tough decisions on, should this person go back? Will they be ready in 4 weeks? Will they be ready in 3 weeks? And these are all the questions that, if you have a strength coach in front of you or a technical coach in front of you, and they're both asking you, are they going to be ready? And you're like, I can't say I don't know. I'm going to tell you percentages. Like, I think they're going to be 80% ready by week 3. They might be 90% at week 4, and then full throttle week 5. And as long as I can outline that, they appreciated that. But what the worst thing that most PTs do is they're like, well, let me just see week to week. Let's see how he does, or he or she. And that's the worst way to approach any return to decision making, because what that says is you have no confidence in yourself. And as you develop more and more confidence, you start to get better at forecasting or planning. It's just like your finances or an injury or whatever it is. For those of you who heard, I had a recent calf strain, and I had a calf strain right before an event on a Saturday, and I heard it on Monday. So I had 5 days to figure it out. And if you would have asked me right now, can I get somebody with a calf strain back to sport in 5 days? I'd say, like, you're crazy. But there's a lot of things that worked in my favor, and I went and projected, like, day by day what I could do ahead of time, and then ultimately that return to play decision has to be up to the athlete to be able to do it. It doesn't mean that you need to get them 100%. And most PTs, most sports PTs have this problem. They have this problem. It's called perfectionism. For many of you, you might have a 3.9, 4.0 GPA in undergrad, or 3.9999 in PT school, or even now you just love being the perfectionist. That's a problem. It is a problem, it is a dilemma in clinical practice. And I know it because I've lived it, and I mentor hundreds of people like this. And what I could say is that that is normal in the sports PT world, and is a problem. It is a normal problem that you will face. So that will stand in your way of returning people back to sport, because you want them at 100 and they don't want to be 100. They just want to be able to be safe to go back. And that's a big difference in that. And so one thing you will face is making a return to play decision with that perfectionist mindset. And so how do you solve that? I think you have to be okay with 80 to 90%. And what I mean by that is, if you ask me when I went back to go for my calf strain on the day of the activity, I was about only 30-40% activity wise. I was like, gosh, I was 90% with my ADLs and about 30% with sport. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this, but I just had to go try it. But if I had a PT who was a perfectionist and they were like, no, it's not safe 100%, I would have put that into my brain. This is not safe. But I knew that I was going to push a limit just a little bit and ride that ridge. But a good PT will then say, here's the repercussions of what can happen. You can make that decision yourself, but here's what my forecast is. If you're not 55% or 80%, you run the risk of re-injury, and that athlete can make that decision. And PTs put it upon themselves. They think that they are always going to have to be the decision maker. Put it back on the client, the patient, the athlete. Let them have a say in it. And I think that's really what they want. And I think that perfectionist side of you always wants to control. And I think return to play decisions will be harder if you keep that mindset. So what's the solution? Back off. Give the independence to the athlete or the patient, and stop relying on your perfectionism to stop people from advancing. And I think you're a barrier. I said this to somebody today that was helping out with leadership. You never want to be a wall. You never want to tell people no. You want to tell people when. And so if you're a wall, somebody that, is like, hey, can I go do this? And you're like, no. Hey, can I do this? No. Guess what they're going to start to do? Go around you some other way, find another clinician, whatever it is. You don't need to be a wall and tell them no. You just need to be a speed bump to slow them down and say when. And that helps people because they trust you, you're looking out for them, and you're giving them honest advice. So as you advance as a sports PT, your return to sport decisions are going to be troublesome for you. I promise you. Even now, I was just presented with a case today of a lumbar spine discectomy. Tough decisions, and they're always going to be challenging. And you either love it or you run away from it. And if you run away from it, you'll never get better. If you run towards it, guess what? Like, go 100 miles an hour. And that's always my feedback to clinicians. Just go 100 miles an hour at it and approach with caution, and facilitate independence with your patients, your athletes. But it's you that will always be the barrier to your athlete's progress. And that's crazy to hear. We usually hear it's like, oh, it's the patient or athlete's compliance, blah blah blah. How about you just guide them appropriately and they'll be fine. So if you're having trouble right now with return to play decisions, that's normal, 100%. It will continue to haunt you if you continue to be that perfectionist and always want 100%. The athlete respects you for that, but they will respect you more if you give them a little leeway and a little play, that you're no longer a wall and you're a speed bump to allow them to be successful. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, all right, collaborating with medical professionals in a professional sports setting. Now, wherever setting you are, this can be challenging, right? Whether it's a PA, a surgeon, a ATC, a PT, MT, Chiro, whatever you're working with. And in pro sports, this was hard because everyone has a specialty. I mean, anytime we had a complex case, there was like 9, 10, 12 people involved. There was a PA, a surgeon, a primary care sports medicine physician. There was an acupuncturist. There was a massage therapist. There was a PT. There was an AT. There was a nutritionist. There was a strength coach, a sports psych. All these people were involved in this person's case, and everybody had a different take on it. And when we're rehabbing something, I'm kind of at the center of it. I'm trying to like guide soft tissue healing. And the strength coach is like, well, what can I do? The technical coach is like, are we able to practice? Nutritionist is like, well, we got to, increase protein intake. Don't let them lose weight. Sports psych is like, we got to keep them positive, keep them focused on the good things. And the medical providers are like, shut them down, blah, blah, blah. And so you have all these counter arguments to like what the progress is. And there was times where we were forgetting about the athlete and allowing them to have a say in how aggressive or conservative do you want to approach this, which allowed them to have freedom to make decisions. And for some people, they didn't realize that, and it went against the athlete's healing. And when you don't allow that person to focus on their healing, what are you doing for them? You're losing sight of what it is that you do for patients and athletes. You're trying to advance them, trying to help them do more. And I feel that in pro sports, it becomes very difficult or challenging at times to collaborate with medical professionals because everyone has a different say. And you might have that in your local environment, and you're going to be faced with that. And I think what you have to do is understand. Um, this is my approach and how I manage athletes. I call it whoever is the head chef is, meaning post-operative, that surgeon is the king or queen, the head chef when it comes to the technical skill of performing the procedure. Great. Who takes on the rehab? The PT, AT, whoever, whatever the dynamic is. Okay, great. Okay, so when does the physician have clearance and they no longer the head chef? Well, as long as they hit different time points and healing, the stitches are healed and everything else. Okay, when does a strength coach become the head chef? Oof, they're like the sous chef at week one because they're already building a program, but that might be around month 4, 5, 6, depending on the procedure. When does the technical coach become the head chef? Oof, probably month 10, 11, 12, right? So you have these different gradients of when people are contributing, but who is owning that phase? And I think that that helped when I brought that to professional sports, when I brought that concept, like I think we need to figure out who's wearing the captain hat or that chef hat at what phase. It really helped people understand, like, okay, so we're all in this, but at what phase are you leading this? And that helped people say, okay, well, I'll back off. You got this. Okay, great. So you're saying I get weeks 4 to 16. Yes, great, that I am the chef. Me and the surgeon are going to outline what needs to happen. Yes. After that, it's going to be strength coach. After that, it's technical coach. So either way, you have to assign that. And so you have to kind of figure out, where do you play a role in people's healing and rehab processes? And if you don't know when that is, how are you going to have that conversation with anybody? So I think you have to come to the awareness of, where do I play a role in my community and the people I serve? Whether you're at a high school, we're an outpatient ortho clinic, you might be the specialist only from week 6 to week 12. That's your domain, but you have to understand, you got to know when that is. It's when you start to go outside of that realm and other people are the head chefs or they're the captains, and you're trying to step on people's toes. It all is better done when it's ahead of time and you start talking about who can take what and when and lead. That helps people process versus in the moment, they're mine. Stop touching them. You shouldn't have done that. And then there's a lot of emotion involved. So collaborating with medical professionals would be a challenge. What I would say is you need to align who's going to captain what and when. That will help people down the road, and your athletes, most importantly, will get serviced at the highest level possible. So talk about number one, return to play decisions. Number two, collaborating with medical professionals on cases. Here's an interesting one. This thought in your head, right, is going to come up. This is the third one. Am I doing this right? Am I progressing them right? Am I doing the right thing? Did I go too aggressive? Did I go too conservative? Should I have done this? Should I have done more plyos? Was it my fault? All those questions will come into play. Those are hard decisions you're going to have to make. And, those are probably the best things for you. They build a nice, strong callus inside your professional development. And if you ask me, Chris, when does that go away? I don't think it ever goes away. I think you address it faster the more skilled and confidence you have. Meaning, if somebody says, "Hey, Chris, this lumbar microdiscectomy that you're talking about, how long is it going to take for them to get back to sport and all these things?" And I'm like, week 12, 12 to 14 is what I would say right now. And if somebody says, like, well, how did you get that confidence to say that? And I'm always questioning, should I have done week 10 to 12? No, 12 to 14 is conservative. I'm going to go with that route. I can just address that faster with more confidence than if it was my first approach. That doesn't ever go away. It's just how quickly you can like subdue that thought process and you can conquer it. And so when you're a new graduate or you're 3 to 5 years out and you maybe don't have mentorship, you're seeing a lot of complex cases, and you've never seen this before, of course you're going to doubt yourself. That's just the nature of professional development. But how fast you can conquer that feeling of fear, of anxiousness, of not doing it properly, that will be the difference, not on years practice, but on lessons learned and the reflections you've had after each tough case. So does it ever go away? No. Do you conquer it faster? Yes, it's almost instant. So when you have it, you're like, yeah, yeah, got it, done it once, boom, done, and on to the next case. Those are really skilled clinicians. They're not any different that they're having that like response, dopamine response, and all this like excitement and all these other things about like conquering this plan and this plan of care that you set. However, they're just able to manage it faster than you. And so that's a hard decision you're gonna have to make is how fast can you conquer this? How fast can you really get over it and move on to the next case? And that will come from, mentorship and reflection, all these other things, but it will be a hard decision. The next one is fourth one, working long hours. These are hard decisions to make as a sports PT. I'm biased. If you know my story, I did a residency for a year and a half, and I worked probably 80 hours a week on that thing, and that was tough. It was my first right after PT school. I went straight into it, and then I worked for the Ohio State University for about a year and a half, and that facility is a beast. I love that place. If you're into education and like progressing yourself, that's a phenomenal, fantastic facility. But it's only because of the mindset that no one really here has a normal week job. You're not here for 40. You're on here paper for 40, but if you really want to get better at your craft, you're out there still doing 40 to 60 and you're volunteering like crazy. So that was a tough one, but my framework has always been you work. And as I've progressed and I went to professional sports, I learned that, man, 80 was all relative. 80 hours, that was average. I did long weekends, I did international trips, domestic trips, and you just worked. You just will always work. Professional athletes always need you. It's not like you're just managing knee pain. When you work in a clinic, I don't think people understand this. When you work in a clinic, you have your email, which people can access you after hours. But in theory, you can only help somebody from like, I don't know, whatever your shift is, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Maybe you work 4 10s or whatever your number is. Um, and you can help them during those hours, but operationally, it's not even open. In the professional world, you're always accessible by text, email, phone call. They see you walk into the dining hall, you're on a campus, and that's tough because you're always accessible and you're always on. We would get phone calls of skin like dermatitis. They would get like illness. They would have the flu, and we'd have to work with their PAs and their primary cares to figure out solutions for them. So ultimately, we realized that it's now part of the process. And once you once you understand that that's just the normal part of the process, you're like, wow, how long can I do this for? Working long hours is tough. It is very, very tough. But it's necessary. I think that you put in a lot of work hours on the front end earlier in your career or middle or whatever you decide to do. That's part of the process. And you'll always have to counter with, should I back off? Is this normal? Blah, blah, blah. I think that when you're a perfectionist and you want to be the best in your craft, that's just the nature of the game. But here's the deal. You're always going to be battling not your internal drive of working long hours, it's other people's perception of that. So let me give you an example. It could be your wife, it could be your spouse, it could be your brother or sister who doesn't work long hours, it could be your roommate that is at home much longer than you and you only come in and out for so long and they want to hang out with you, or it's a significant other. There's so many layers to this. And so you're going to battle their questions, other people's questions of like, why do you work so hard? Your family, your aunt, your uncle. We haven't seen you at family parties. I remember in undergrad, for those who don't know, I was illiterate for many, many years, up until 18 years old. And I was trying to learn how to read and write in my first year of college. And I remember studying all day Saturday, all the way till the nighttime, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Same thing on Sundays. I was learning how to read, but also doing anatomy and all sort of stuff. And I was like, man, this is a beast. And I want to just go out, hang out with my friends. I remember a cousin of mine coming in at 11 o'clock at night on Saturday, comes over to my house and says, we're going out, put the book away. And I was like, no, I need to stay here. I need to get my stuff done. And it was saying no to big opportunities and big chances of like going out and hang out with my friends and family that I had to give up a lot in order to get to where I wanted. And for some people, that's hard to hear. Maybe they don't have the same vision as you, they don't have the same story as you, they don't have the same goals. And that's what you have to kind of understand as you work long hours and you're like, am I doing this? Why am I working so hard? Because it doesn't matter to anybody else but you. You have to see it as, what's my long-term journey? I want to be the best in my craft. I want to be good at what I do. You have to realize you're not doing this for anyone else but yourself. And if those people's opinions are going to cloud what you do, are you really doing it for yourself? And if you stop, that's okay. But just understand it's going to come back to haunt you. If you're like me, you're just constantly thinking, always like, what can I be doing better? What should I have done on that case? What I should like, how do I mentor other people? How do I do this? And you're always doing that, and that's very normal. So working long hours is part of the process. Your decision, the hard decision you'll come to is, am I on the right path? Am I overdoing it? And am I gonna let other people cloud their judgment on me on how and why I'm doing this? It's up to you. I have long decisions with my wife and my team about what it is that you have to put in to get what you want. And if you assume that you're going to just show up for 40 hours and get good at your craft, that won't last long. It's going to take you 10, 20 years. Now, if you're willing to put in the time and effort on the backside to actually get good at this thing and take more than one CEU course, because that's the only thing mandatory for your state, or investing your own money, that's just the nature of the game. If you don't want to do that, you're not going to advance. So you have to put in those long hours. You have to, and it's just whether you decide to listen to other people or not. So working long hours is a long-term decision you will always have. The next one is, comes right off of that, staying hungry all year long. I don't know, if you're the Energizer Bunny and you have that battery, like, and you can hang all year long, good for you. But there will be moments and peaks and valleys of seasons within a year, and I think you have to take them. Early in my career, it was like, man, the first 10 years were like just crank on it, 12 months of just working hard. And I think that if you take that mindset, you got to be willing to pay the price too. Like, I also wasn't sleeping, and my diet wasn't the best. I was gaining weight, like, but I gave it all at the expense of, I wanted to be the best at my craft. And that is a tough decision, but that's what I wanted to do. That was for me. And so as you navigate your own methodology or paradigm on how much time and energy you're going to put on this stuff, that's a personal decision. But I will say that is very, very normal. The caveat or the hard decision you have to make is, how do you stay hungry all year long? That's an internal, like, how do you get this brain up here to stay positive the whole time? You don't let other people cloud it. I think you stay very focused on what you need to be able to do, and don't listen to others around you who don't have that same vision or mindset. And you can say, well, like, how do I do that? Because maybe your roommate or your aunt, uncle, or your mom, dad don't see that same thing. I think that you need to go into those conversations with, you need to keep it very simple. You're not talking about your professional development, because they're going to pick on you, like, oh, you're always working, you're always working. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you can maintain a balance with your, like, personal development. Maybe it's your spouse or whatever it is. I think you have to have a balance there. But I think ultimately you have to be able to last all year long. And how do you do that? Surround yourself with people who are just as crazy and be able to do that, and have really good conversations with the people around you who are asking, why do you work so much? I think outlining that is a good, realistic way of saying, this is what I need right now for the next 1 to 2 years so I can crush this and be really good at my craft. So that way I can cruise a little bit later. There's going to be seasons in your professional career. To be able to last all year long, you're going to have to go in waves, and your waves might be years, right? Years of clinical experience. So it might be that when you have kids or when you get married or whatever it is, those might be your seasons. So just understand, work hard, take care of everything you can. Take care of everything you can when you have that energy, when you have that opportunity. So if you're later in your career and it's tough for you, I get it. You're going to have to put some time and effort on the back end. But if you're right out of PT school, you're single, you're not married, you don't have kids, like, that's a perfect time. Don't waste it on just cruising. Just because you finished PT school, might as well keep the momentum. If you want to know why I did a residency right after, because I knew that I just had to get in there right away. That's not for everybody. It's not the ideal or best or worst way possible. It's just whatever works for you. I just knew my mindset. That's why I did it right after PT school. Okay. So that's staying hungry all year long. Re-injury of cases. This is going to be a tough decision. You're always going to challenge whether, did you make the right decision or not? But you're going to have some people flare up, and you're going to have this tough decision of, do I send them back? Where did I go wrong? You're going to put yourself down. Re-injury of cases will happen to you at some point in the 30 years of practice, whatever that is. You will run into a case where you're like, man, that rotator cuff or that knee injury or whatever it is, it like re-flared up, and maybe it's a significant injury or re-injury. That's part of the process. You never want those in your life, but you have to understand that is a normal part of the process. A hard decision you will have to make is how much pressure you put on yourself because of that. It is normal, and you can let it eat you up, or you take it as a huge lesson learned and input that into your toolbox so it doesn't happen again. The positive people, the people who come out of these things, are able to push that to the side and say, great, I'm going to use this to make me a better person. We know that's really hard, especially early in your career when you have, I don't know, post-surgical flare-up or a re-tear or something. That's hard. That's always hard. And I hope that hits you a nice punch to the stomach to help you understand that no one's invincible. It's part of the process. But all you can do is do the homework so it never happens again. So if you're having repeat re-tears or re-aggravations, that's a clinical problem. If you have one, I get it. But if you're having multiple, I mean, it's either your clinical reasoning or your progressions or whatever it is. But one off, you can't put that on yourself. So just be aware of that. So those are all the hard decisions I think that you'll make as a sports PT. Now, what's the solution to all of this? Truly, like if you ask me, what's the one thing that you would recommend to any sports PT to help make these hard decisions? I would say it's normal to go through all these things. I'm telling you what's going to hit you in your professional career, because this is every person I mentor is going through this. I've done it. Successful PTs will all do this. How do you do this? Some would say like, oh, you just gotta get mentorship. No, mentorship is a part of this whole process, but it all starts with you, and that means it is an internal drive and question that you have that nobody can take away. And if you are listening to this and you're like, I feel like I'm different, I've been doing this a long time, I watch my peers, I watch everybody else try and do this, and they just can't. I just seem to be pushing harder than everybody else. I want to be better than everybody else, and not everybody wants that. And if you see yourself separating from other people, you go to it. There's something different about you. You take it on. What happens is there's a lot of people who are going to cloud that judgment along that way, whether that's a peer or a parent or a spouse or significant other. They will cloud that. And what needs to happen is you just need to understand that you have to be able to finesse and balance your personal and professional goals with your long-term vision, and then balance that out with, like, what does your personal life look like while you do that? Now that's why I say, if you don't have, a spouse or significant other or kids or anything else right now, now's the time to take advantage of that. Maybe a nice little kick in the pants of like, what are you doing wasting this time? When you have family and everything else, it's going to be tougher to juggle. So that's a hard decision you'll have to make of, how much professionally do I want to do as I start to build a family and have a spouse and get engaged and do all these other things, or buy your first home. Those are hard decisions, but it's just going to be constant communication and reflection of, where are you relative to your personal and professional growth goals, and learning from your mistakes on all those pieces. And on top of that, being obsessive about getting better and the lessons you learn from every single mistake you have, every patient or athlete, every conversation you have with a peer or colleague, and then add a layer of mentorship on top of that to help you reflect and be like, no, here's the direction you should have gone. I wouldn't have done this. And then you're just making exponential improvements versus linear. And when you have that, mentorship is not the game changer. Mentorship is icing on the cake. It comes from the clinician internally to question and figure out what the lessons learned, and always have that reflection so that you're on the right path. Now, when you layer icing on that cake with mentorship, game over. You will be a phenomenal clinician, but nobody is going to recharge that battery to work all week long. Am I making the right decisions? Was this re-injury because of me? Collaborating with medical professionals, making those tough decisions. These are all things you will face. The person who is successful at this will come out on the other side exponentially better. Why? Because they kept pushing. They had clear communication. They had set goals. They just attacked them. They conquered them. And along that way, they didn't listen to the crap that is around them, whether it's social media or other people telling them to go one direction or another, that you stay true to what it is that you love. And if you're a sports PT type a perfectionist, you're on the right path. It's just, you're just going to get sidetracked every once in a while by distractions. So for those of you who needed to hear that, I hope that helps. I'm telling you what is literally going to hit you as you grow professionally. So the biggest thing that I have done over the last 3 to 5 years, as I'm into more and more physical therapists, is I've helped people understand what it is that they can see coming down the line, and then what decisions they're going to have to make. And if you can see that, you're going to make better decisions. That's just the nature of the game. But if you don't know what's going to hit you and you get hit, you make bad decisions. So that's why I created all my mentorship programs, literally just to be able to help people see a little bit further. And I think that's what people are looking for. They're not looking for people to hold their hands and, guide them along the way. They're looking for checkpoints, like, was this the route I should have gone? And that is truly mentorship. It's not somebody hand holding you and saying you should do this. Don't, all the time do this. A good mentor is just somebody who listens and gives feedback as you need it. And that's an art. And that's why I created all my mentorship programs. That's why I'm on a different high at the moment. And so that's my next forte. That's my next goal. And for those of you who are joined or are joining my Sports PT Kickstarter online mentorship program, be excited, because this is literally all I'm sharing. All the clinical pearls, all the challenges along the way to forecast, and then just giving you my feedback along the way. Like, here's what I would do, change this. Here's a different program, structure it differently. And if that sounds like you, if you're looking for somebody to help you, like guidance wise, and they don't really need somebody to tell you what to do, you just need like a little bit of constructive feedback here and there, think about joining. It is my online mentorship program is 8 weeks. It starts in January 11th, 2023, whenever you listen to this. And it's 8 weeks, and it's 2 hours for 8 weeks. And it's just going over topics, structured topics, everything from acute injury management to sports rehab to strength conditioning and to injury prevention. It's the full gamut as a sports PT. So for those of you who are registered, I'm excited to see you in there. For those of you interested, go ahead and go to my website, drchrisgarcia.com/Kickstarter. And I'm excited to see you in the course. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next episode. Take care.